Welcome to the latest spooky review from Spooky Ventures. This is part of our series of spooky reviews. This time around, I'm going to be talking about the new Hell High Blu-Ray release from Arrow Video. The film Hell High was originally released in 1989. Given that whole 1980s thing, you can make a few assumptions. First, the soundtrack definitely feels very 80s, including some pretty weak to average songs played during various parts of the film. You can also count on some gratuitous nudity. Now, both of those things obviously are there. That brings us to the film itself beyond those 2 points, though. Let me say at the start that I definitely enjoyed the movie. It certainly starts slow, though. Some of the performances are pretty weak, too. I mean, this is definitely not, high-grade art. There's quite a bit of high school hijinks early that calls to mind some of the Good Times high school movies of the period. I can see why they included some of it, in part to give some character history and in part to create a false sense of security and lightheartedness. I think they spent too much of the movie on that part, though, and it seems to lose direction there and actually get a little tedious. That said, this turns seriously dark once the main characters decide to torment a teacher who has some messed up history we see in the very first scene of the film. From there it gets into more traditional horror territory. It's suitably twisted, and that part of the film runs long enough to make it worth the other stuff you have to get through to get to that payoff. Overall, I'd consider the movie to be a competent 80s horror film that's not without its issues. If you watch all the way through, it really does stick with you, though. There is some serious brutality, and the ending is anything but happy. This release contains a lot of bonuses in the form of interviews, a deleted scene, and much, much more. I know this film has gotten some pretty bad reviews from people, but I have to think to a large degree they are undeserved reviews. Just don't come into this expecting a perfect movie or any kind of high art. If you set your expectations of this being a flawed 80s horror film that really manages to redeem itself before it's over, there's plenty to like about it. Spooky Ventures is the home for spooky content and spooky merchandise on the web. Check it out today at spookyventures.com. And remember, always keep it spooky.